have great confidence in him defensively. That's kind of, it's great that a young guy comes into this league with more defensive principles than the offensive principles. He's got a good idea offensively what to do, but he's going to grow and get better and better at the offensive side of it. It's hard to teach the other way, and so he does a great job. He's got long arms. When you have an understanding of the game, I think you have an understanding of how the flow is going and where they're looking. I thought late in the game, they tried to throw the ball in the corner. He didn't get sucked in. He kind of split guys and had those long arms out, and they had to avoid his arm so it wasn't a steal and it went out of bounds. So, and then he got the tip away. And so he does a great job for us defensively. We love that part of it. That's where we're trying to become a good defensive team, and that's a good start for us.
You just heard Jeff Hornacek heaping praises on the rookie, complimenting him on his defensive acumen and the role that he's playing in the Knicks' early season success. We just seen the Knicks come back and beat Utah in a game where they were down 12, 13 points against a tough defensive team. Utah, I think, is top 5 in the league. I think it was a really good win, maybe, in my opinion, our best win of the season. And the reason why is because it was a gritty game, a game that they had to dig down deep and pull out on a night when Porzingis wasn't really hitting. Other people needed to step up and play a role, and they did it, and they pulled out the win. And so I think it was a really, really good win. I think it's the type of win that shows the sign of a good basketball team. So I'm really happy that they were able to pull that win out. And I'm starting to, when I see the team getting down, I'm starting to believe that they can come back at any time, because we've seen it in Indiana, we've seen it in Charlotte. Now we've seen it versus Utah, but this was a better win than those other games, because, in those other games, Porzingis had 40 in one of those games and 28, 30 in another one of those games. But against Utah, he was really having an off night and wasn't really hitting like that. But he still managed to pull out some big shots in the fourth quarter. Tim Hardaway he scored 14 of 26 in the fourth quarter. So that was a really good win. But I want to get back to Frank and his defense, because I want to know from you, do you believe that Frank is already, as a rookie, one of the top defensive wings? And when I'm saying wings, I'm going to say point guard and shooting guards in the league. So I want to know what's popping with your Knicks family. Hit me in the comments below. Hit me on Twitter, however you can get at me. But right now I want to talk about Frank and his defense and the reason why I asked you that question. I'm not going to keep you long. I'm going to keep this brief, quick, short. I'm also going to talk about the Raptors a little bit. So let's get this show popping. As we speak, Frank is ranked number 2 in steals at 2 per game. If you calculate it over 36 minutes, he's ranked number 1 in the league at like 3.5 or something like that steals per game. When he's on the court, the Knicks have a defensive rating of 102.4. When he's off the court, their defensive rating is 108.8. A 102.4 defensive rating is good for 8th in the league. 108.8 is like 28th in the league. So this means, what these numbers say, is that when Frank is in the game, the Knicks have a top 10 defense. When he's not in the game, they fall to like the bottom 3. Now, of course, everything is based on rotations and, who you're playing against. When Frank is in the game early, he's usually playing against the other team's bench. Later on, when he's in the fourth quarter, at least lately, he's playing against the other team's starters. So that makes a difference. But it's obvious that he has an impact on the game defensively. So what I did is a mini study and looked at top defensive point guards and top defensive shooting guards, since Frank is interchangeable. I compared the defensive impact each player has on his team with the defensive impact Frank has on the Knicks. So what I did is I looked at the defensive rating of each team when that specific player is on the court and off the court, and compared it to the Knicks defensive rating when Frank is on the court and off the court. And then I looked at the differential to see who had the best differential. Let's break this down just a little bit so that you can understand the study. The lower the defensive rating, the better. You can see when Frank is on the floor, the Knicks have a rating of 102.4. When he's off the floor, it's 108.8. 102.4 is good for 8th in the league. 108.8 is good for 28th in the league, as we explained earlier. The differential is the difference between the two ratings. So Frank has a differential of -6.4, which is good. Okay. If you have a positive differential, it's not so good. So keep that in mind as we're looking at the defensive ratings of the teams and the differential of each player while we're looking at this study. To identify players, I used my basic knowledge of basketball and the eye test. I also used an article published by the Bleacher Report, where they did a small study to look at the top 5 defensive players in each position. If you want to take a look at the article, there's a link in the description below. So let's take a look at the point guards first. I compared Ntilikina to John Wall, Chris Paul, Patrick Beverley, Drew Holiday, and Ricky Rubio. Now, I'm not going to go over each defensive rating. You can see it on the screen, and it'll be up for enough time so you can look at it. But I will go over the differential. You can see that Ntilikina has a -6.4 differential. As we discussed earlier, that's good. John Wall has a -0.6. Chris Paul has a positive 12.5. That's shocking to me, because Chris Paul has always been known to be a good defensive point guard. We'll chop it up to him being new to the Rockets. And there's always a transition there. He's been out for a couple of weeks, so we'll see if that changes later on. Patrick Beverley has a -2.5 differential. Drew Holiday has a -19.4. That's a big differential. That's great for Drew Holiday. It means he's bringing a lot of defense to his team. But then what's happening when he's not on the floor? That's alarming, kind of. And then Ricky Rubio, which is a little bit shocking to me, has a +6 differential. Based on these numbers, Ntilikina is second in differential behind Drew Holiday. And remember, he's being compared to some of the top defensive point guards in the league. But let's keep in mind that a lot depends on how good your team is defensively. If a team is really good defensively, one player may not have that much of an impact. But I want to put these numbers back up on the screen because I want you to look at something else. Notice the on-court defensive rating of each player. Ntilikina is at 102.4, John Wall 102.8, Chris Paul 115.8, Patrick Beverley 105.1, Drew Holiday 100.4, and Ricky Rubio 104.2. So now in general, you look at John Wall and the Wizards, they have number 10 defense. Chris Paul and the Rockets is number 12. Patrick Beverley and the Clippers is number 21. Drew Holiday and the Pelicans are at number 17. And the Minnesota Timberwolves are number 26. The Knicks are 23rd in the league in defensive rating in general. When you compare the Knicks defensive rating when Ntilikina is on the court to these other teams' defensive rating when their defensive point guard is on the court, the Knicks have a better rating than everyone besides the Pelicans when Drew Holiday is on the court. This points to Ntilikina having a greater impact on his team than these players are having on their team. So that's a feather in his cap when it comes to him being rated as one of the top defensive point guards in the league. So we're going to switch over to shooting guards and compare his numbers to some of the top defensive shooting guards in the league. Ntilikina was compared to Tony Allen, Danny Green, Marcus Smart, Jonathan Simmons, and Jimmy Butler. This time, his differential is better than every player listed. In general, the Knicks have a worse defense than all of these teams. But when Ntilikina's on the court, they are ranked third behind the Boston Celtics when Marcus Smart is on the floor. And they have the best defensive rating in the league in general. And behind the Orlando Magic when Jonathan Simmons is on the floor. To be fair, I looked at the differentials of players like Avery Bradley, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard. With Kawhi Leonard, I had to go back to last year because he's yet to play. And it just so happens that these guys have positive differentials. Does it mean that they're not good defensive players? No. Like we said before, a lot is based on lineups that they're playing with when they're on the floor. And, you know, Avery Bradley's new to the Pistons. Paul George is new to the Thunder. So, you know, there's adjustments to be made, you know, and we'll see how that plays out. But to sum it up for Frank, Frank is ranked number 2 in the league in steals at only 20 minutes per game when these other guys are playing 30 minutes a game. Per 36 minutes, he'd be ranked number 1 at 3.5 steals per game. His differentials, when compared to top defensive point guards, is number 2 behind Jrue Holiday. When compared to top defensive shooting guards, is number 1. His team, when he's on the floor, has a 102.4 defensive rating, good for 8th in the league. When he's not on the floor, 108.8 rating, one of the bottom 3 in the league. All this bodes really well for Frank. And I think it merits asking the question, is he one of the top defensive point guards and wings in the league as a rookie? I don't want to say one of the top defensive players already because we haven't compared them to all positions. But for point guards and wings, is he already one of the top defensive players? And shoot, heck, might as well ask it. Is he one of the top defensive players in the league? Even though we didn't compare him, is he? I want to know what you guys think about it. Talk about it a little bit. Let me know in the comments. Let's have a discussion. I think it's a discussion well worth having. The past couple of days, people have been talking about, you know, his defense. So tell me, let me know what you think. So let's talk about the Toronto Raptors game. The Knicks going to have the work cut out for them. The Raptors average 111 points per game. They just scored 129 points and beat Houston, which we know is another high-scoring team. You got 2 guards in Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan that can light it up at any time. Kyle Lowry is averaging 15 points and 7 assists. DeRozan is averaging 25 points per game. So we'll talk about Frank playing defense. We're going to need it tonight. I'm sure he'll see some time on Lowry. He'll see some time on DeRozan. We'll really get a chance to see what he's made of. Defensively, their opponents average 106 points per game. So we should be able to score, but can we score with them? Last season, the Raptors were a top 5 defense. It's early in the season. You never know when that defense is going to start clicking. Another thing that I want to look out for is the way the Knicks guard the three-point line. The Raptors so far this season have been a mediocre three-point shooting team, about 34.5%. But I'm sure they've seen the difficulties that we've had guarding the three-point line. So they may scheme to try to get some guys open on that three-point line, running off of screens, floating guys to the corner because we definitely have trouble guarding that corner 3. I want to see if we can make an adjustment and start to guard that three-point line a little bit better because it's killed us the last 2 games for sure. I really do want this game. You know, they're in our division right now. They're ranked second in the division. We're ranked third. They're ranked fourth in the Eastern Conference. We're ranked fifth. I know it's really early to start talking about playoff type of stuff, but for our team, it's a big step to beat a rival in our division and step ahead of them. For them, it may not mean much, but for us, I think it means a lot to be able to go to Toronto, beat a rival team, leapfrog them in the standings. I think it does a lot for our confidence as a young team. So I'd really like us to go there and beat them. They're a team that's been, you know, one of the top 4 teams for the past few years in the East. And if we can go there and beat them after they've come off of a big win over Houston, then it could, you know, be a statement for ourselves. Maybe not a statement for the league because it's early in the season, but it can be a statement for ourselves. So I definitely want to go in and get this game. All right, guys, I'm heading out. Got a little bit of a cold, so I'm going to go take care of this. But I'm looking forward to the game tonight. Looking forward to chopping it up with you guys on Twitter and in the comments. Remember, if you have anything you want to send me, send it to me. We'll get it up. But let's have a good game tonight.